Hello and welcome to the Gain Line, Wales Online's daily rugby debate show. I'm Ben James. I'm joined by Simon Thomas and Andy Howell. It's another busy day in Japan, not just because Wales have named their team, but we'll start with that. 13 changes to face Uruguay. Let's get into it, boys.
It's an interesting one because we kind of knew that certain players were going to have to bat up again, first team regulars, given the injury situation, particularly behind the scrum. And Josh Adams and Hadley Parks are the two guys doing that. We knew about the injury to Dan Biggar, who's sitting this one out, of taking a double bang to the head against Fiji. We also knew Josh Adams, a bit of a problem, but he's come through that from his dead leg. Jonathan Davis took a bang to the knee. He's sitting there. That's a slight worry because we hear his knee is a bit swollen. And the other one we found out about today is George North, I think a bit of a sore ankle, we say. So because of that, as I say, Adams and Parks are the ones who go again, and the rest of the team, Andy, players who haven't had a chance yet getting a shout.
Yeah, some interesting selections though. Aaron Wainwright playing number 8 to me is really interesting because I don't think he's played in that position before, certainly not professional level. What it says is that Wales are still uncertain who they should play at number 8 in their quarter-final, the World Cup. Ross Moriarty played against Fiji. It's been Josh Navidi before it, but maybe they are thinking that Wainwright could play there with perhaps Navidi at 6 because Wainwright is a big man. He's really explosive, got good handling skills and good footwork. Could he actually, could he offer so much at number 8 that he'd be worth a go in the quarterfinals if he comes off against Uruguay?
Do you think that, because what they've gone for in the big games so far tends to have been Wainwright 6 and Navidi 8? So you're talking about swapping those around potentially?
Yeah, but you can, if necessary, you can only swap it. You only need to swap it at scrums, don't you? If you're looking for someone someone really explosive and carry and all off the scrum, once the scrums are over, really the back row, the numbers almost become redundant, don't they, in the modern game?
Just a reminder, if you are tuning in, this is the Gain Line, Wales Online's daily rugby debate show. Please get your questions and your comments in for these two gentlemen here, and we'll get through as many of them as we can. I think before the tournament, if we just sat here and said that Wales would have played 3 number 8s throughout the pool stages, we probably wouldn't have expected that. We also probably wouldn't have expected Hallam Amos to be covering number 10, but that's what it's looking like, because number 10, and it's a bit of a
we don't know
position,
really.
isn't it?
we went through it this morning. There's about 5 people we thought could be covering it. Amos has been mentioned in the week. We know Hadley Parks has played there a little bit for the Scarlets. Lee Halfpenny's got the all-round game. He could probably go there. And then Warren Gatland today said that maybe one of the scrum halves could be lined up. We don't know which one that be, whether it's Aled Davis who's starting, and you've got 2 on the bench, and Thomas Williams and Gareth Davis. So he said, as he said, we'll have to wait and see who goes to number 10 if Reece Patchell goes off or moves out to that position. So yeah, we could be in for some interesting conundrums.
I tell you what, there would be a lot of pressure on whoever filled in at number 10 if anything happened to Patchell, and we hope it doesn't, early in the game.
Who would you move there, and?
I would put Parks there because he's got a lot of experience as an outside half-back in New Zealand, and I would switch Amos to centre where he has played a bit, and I think he's got potential for the future. And I would put one that is, don't forget, it's 2 scrum halves on the bench, and they're the only backs, aren't they? And James Davis can play wing. He's played most of the Heineken Champions Cup quarter-final on the wing for the Scarlets. Or Thomas Williams has certainly got the Gareth Davis.
Any other forwards in that squad who could play in the backs?
Well, of course, Justin Tipridge. He's setting me up again.
Come on, let's behave now. Okay, that's what Andy and Simon have made of the team. But while we're stuck here back in Wales, Matt Southcombe is out in Japan. We spoke to him earlier to get his thoughts. Okay, so now joined by Matt Southcombe out in Japan. Matt, it's a busy week for you. It's another Wales team announcement just days after the Fiji game.
Yeah, it's been a busy couple of days. Obviously, as you just discussed, we've had a short turnaround. Feels like we're seeing Warren Gatland every other day at the moment, and we pretty much are, to be fair. He's just leading his team now to face Uruguay on Sunday. They're trying to deal with a quick turnaround as well as the journalists, more importantly, and he's made a lot of changes.
Exactly, he has 13 changes in all, and some quite interesting ones, particularly in the back line.
Yeah, it's very interesting. They've got to manage a lot of injuries that they picked up in that Fiji game. And it's not an easy period. That was such a physical game. A lot of players left it carrying bumps, bruises and knocks, and some things a little more serious as well, So Dan Biggar, who was never really going to play in this game, Gatland has already spoken today about how the fact they were always going to go into this game with only one fly half, and Biggar was obviously ruled out by that head knock he suffered against Fiji. What we didn't know as well is that George North was carrying an ankle injury into that Fiji game, and he played through the pain in that one, so he wasn't in consideration for this, just purely to rest him and get that ankle sorted. And obviously we know all about Jonathan Davis as well. We've got that concern over him and his knee, so those are the sorts of things Warren Gatland has had to manage this weekend, and as such, like you said, he's picked a pretty interesting backline.
Exactly. Obviously you've got Josh Adams and Hadley Parkes named in the starting backline, but both of them have been carrying injuries over the last few days, and there's not a great deal of cover, is there, on the bench?
Yeah, there's not, and in an ideal world, Josh Adams wouldn't have played in this game. Warren Gatland admitted they wanted to rest him, but injuries elsewhere and the situation has dictated that they had to get him to go again. And Hadley Parkes himself is carrying that fractured bone in his hand, so they've been having to manage him quite a lot recently. And you look at the bench, and as you said, there's not a great deal of option there. And we know James Davis has played out in the wide channels for the Scarlets in an emergency, and his sevens background means that he can do that. And Gareth Davis also played on the wing for the final few minutes against Fiji. And Warren Gatland has also floated the idea, though I think we may come onto it, of one of the scrum halves playing at fly half, and that's a really interesting little dilemma as well. So whilst it may appear that there isn't a great deal of options on the bench, I think the hope is that Wales can get this game put to bed with their first 15, and then it's purely a case of making up the numbers for the final quarter or maybe even the second half.
That's interesting you touched upon that, because that's where I was going to head next, is a sort of fly half cover. Obviously no Dan Biggar in the squad. Rhys Patchell will start. Hallam Amos, Hadley Parkes have been mentioned. Funnily enough, Liam Williams has been mentioned pre-tournament as fly half cover, but he's not involved. I suppose Lee Halfpenny's there, but as you say, a scrum half has also been knocked about. Any idea who the 9 who could potentially play 10 is?
Well, Warren Gatland's been playing his cards very close to his chest on this one. To be honest with you, if there was an emergency, my instinct says that Hadley Parkes would be the man who fills that role, having done it for the Scarlets. Now, he didn't have a great deal of success there for the Scarlets, but at least he has experience there. Now, Hallam Amos is another player who's been mooted as a potential cover option there. Hasn't played there since his schoolboy days, but an intelligent rugby player, has found his voice and has got a lot of experience in recent years as well, so he'd probably not be a bad option at fly half. He's been running there in training as well, as Gatland said after the Fiji game. So although the scrum halves have been mentioned, I kind of get the impression that that's just possibly to throw us off the scent a little bit. I'm not entirely convinced that there is a fly half option amongst those scrum halves. So I would be more inclined to look towards somebody like Hadley Parkes or Hallam Amos as the cover for Rhys Patchell.
And Warren Gatland also jokingly mentioned Justin Tipuric as a fly half option before sort of suggesting that he could do a job out wide. I know that's music to the ears of our colleague Andy Howell, who's been banging that drum for God knows how many years. He's not a serious option, is he, to fill in maybe at centre?
Well, you joke about it, but we know he's got the talent to play in the wider channels, and popping up in the wide channels every so often and actually playing at inside centre from set plays or from lineouts and from scrums, those are two totally different things. So we've got to we are in danger of assuming that a little too much of certain players at this point, but like I said, if Wales get out and score a bonus point try in the 30th minute, for example, then nothing will be off the table. There could be a really strange looking Welsh side for the final the second half. There are players in that side who Gatland does want to protect as much as he can, and you'd suggest that those are probably the likes of Josh Adams and Hadley Parkes, and maybe even Patchell, because if Patchell gets an injury, then Wales have got a real issue at fly half. So Wales are hoping to put this game to bed early on, and then they will make changes that may give the side a very unfamiliar look. And if that's the case, then maybe Justin Tipuric might pop up in the back line. All joking aside, he's clearly got the talent to play in those positions. But first and foremost, Wales have got to get the job done before we start talking about playing flankers in the backs and all that sort of thing.
If you look at the pack, there's not really too many surprises there. Aaron Wainwright starts at 8, which I suppose is quite interesting. But on the bench, we do see the first glimpse of Wyn Jones covering the tight head prop, don't we?
Yeah, we do. Though I would suggest that, it's probably going to be a case of Dylan Lewis playing as much as he can. In an ideal world, I don't think Wyn Jones will come onto the field. He's had a very heavy workload so far in this tournament. He's been one of Wales' best performers on the loose head. And I don't think Warren Gatland will throw him on and give him too much game time, because, like I said, he's had to play a lot of rugby so far in this tournament, maybe even more than we thought before the tournament started. He's really emerged as a really good starting loose head for Wales there. So I don't think Gatland will want to give him too much game time. But if he does come onto the field, like I said, Wales will hope that by that point the game is put to bed. But it will be interesting to see how he copes.
Obviously, at the minute, all the talk in Japan is about the weather. There's a typhoon on the way. First of all, what's the weather like where you're based?
Yeah, well, it's not too bad down here. It's gone a bit cloudy in the last few hours, but this morning when we got up to go to the Wales press conference, it was easily around 25 degrees, and it's going to get up to around 30 degrees here in Kumamoto. And for Sunday, the weather is similarly positive. It's looking like 28 degrees and sunshine. At the moment, that might change, but right now that's what we're looking at. So whilst there's obviously a lot going on much further north in Japan with the typhoon that's about to hit Tokyo and the surrounding area, down here in Kumamoto, we really couldn't be much further away from Tokyo if we tried, really. So we're well out of the way at the moment from that, and the game is likely to be played in fairly good conditions.
What's the feeling out in Japan about the typhoon that's heading this way? Because obviously back here in the UK, I think a lot of people can't get their heads around it fully, sort of just how big an impact this is going to have on the country. But I imagine it's quite a different sort of scenario out there in Japan.
Yeah, like I said, we're a little bit detached from all the drama down here, but we've been keeping a close eye on it all, obviously. Myself and the other journalists are following Wales around, and the first thing to think of is that this is, by all accounts, it is going to be one of the worst typhoons they've had in recent memory, and they do cause significant damage. There were 3 deaths in the typhoon that hit last month, and this is meant to be much bigger than that one. So first and foremost, you just hope for the people of Tokyo and the city itself that it's not as bad as forecasted. But we have to be mindful of that, and obviously, if you want to look at the Rugby World Cup and the cause and the chaos that it might cause on the tournament itself, then it's not ideal. You feel for teams like Italy and potentially teams like Scotland and Japan who have got games that are still very much important in this tournament that look like they might be under threat. Obviously, Italy, New Zealand is gone, and we're waiting to hear about Japan and Scotland, and it's not a very satisfactory way for things to transpire. But we have to be mindful of the bigger picture, and I think World Rugby are trying to do their best in the situation that they've been given. My only sort of gripe with World Rugby in this is that the lack of foresight that appears to have taken place. This should have been looked at before the tournament began. This has been a possibility. It's typhoon season here in Japan. This wasn't beyond the realms of possibility months and months ago, even years ago. So there should have been something put in place then in the event of a typhoon cancelling a game, and the regulations of the tournament have really backed them into a bit of a corner, because they are very black and white. If a game cannot be played in the pool stages, then it will go down as a 0-0 draw. So in that regard, they're backed into a corner. Obviously the Scottish Rugby Union are kicking off. The Scottish press are writing some very strong comment pieces, and you kind of sympathise with Scotland a little, because if that was Wales, then you can only imagine what sort of pieces we might be writing, and how the Welsh public might be feeling, and how Warren Gatland and Martin Phillips might be feeling. So you do sympathise with with sides like Scotland at the moment, but at the end of the day, it's the weather, and there's not a lot you can do about that.
Indeed, and I'm sure we'll hear plenty more on this as the weekend progresses, but I believe for you it's no more weather reporting, and you'll be back to rugby reporting this weekend. Wales v Uruguay is your port of call, and hopefully it's a good game and you enjoy yourself out in Kumamoto.
Alright, cheers Ben.
So there we go, that's what Matt has to say. Not too sure about that split screen. It looked like a before and after of tan or sunscreen lotion gone wrong. So
you look very serious on it.
Yeah, I do look very serious. That's the impact that Matt Southcombe has when he's speaking to me. So we'll move on to something else that's very serious, which
properly
is
serious.
Exactly, which is this super typhoon that's going to hit Japan this weekend. We've had 2 games cancelled: Italy versus New Zealand and England against France, and it looks like we potentially could have a third one. But that's the big sort of talking point, right, isn't it?
It's a huge talking point. In a way that the first 2 weeks of the tournament were dominated by high tackles, refereeing decisions, and officiating. There's only one story in town now, and that's Typhoon Hagibis. I think we're going to pronounce it. Let's not put all joking aside, because it's a really, really serious storm heading towards the Japanese.
Isn't the latest weather forecast though it is weakening?
It's going to go from violent, which is the very top of the sort of scale in terms of Japanese typhoons in the area, coming down to the next highest, but still very serious. That people are talking about it being, the most severe to hit the area since 1958, when there were around 1,200 deaths. Right now, obviously things have changed since 1958 in terms of housing and safety provision and infrastructure. But this is a really, really serious storm that's coming. There's near a full moon as well, so it's likely to be potentially coastal flooding, damage to buildings, damage to infrastructure. It's going to cause problems in terms of getting around, a lot of transport delays already. Basically everybody in that kind of Tokyo Bay area, Toyota City, Yokohama, I think will be instructed to stay indoors. It's not a time to be playing rugby, we understand that, and there's no way those games could go on Saturday, but it does create a major issue for the tournament. And of course the question is, have they done enough to prepare and put themselves ready for this? The start of the week, World Rugby was sitting and we're monitoring the typhoon, and we've got a robust contingency programme in place. Now, understandably, people took those robust plans to mean more than cancellation, 0-0, 2 points aside. And whatever's happened, those robust plans, it would seem, have been defeated by nature. Nature's a powerful thing, but it has left a lot of questions on, doesn't it?
Yeah, it certainly has. Why weren't the games actually brought forward to today? Because the weather forecast was good for today. I think the All Blacks would be prepared to play today. Italy would have. Japan and Scotland would have. Oh, certainly the Scots, because they are threatening legal action over all this. So there's a lot of side things that are happening. What's interesting to me though is that I see there's the Japanese Grand Prix this weekend, and they rescheduled all their stuff for Sunday. So they're expecting the weather to pass and the damage not to be so great, so they can go ahead with it. They've acted decisively. What have World Rugby done? I
suppose the slight difference is that's down in Suzuka, which is like 3/4 of the way to Osaka, not quite so much in the eye of the storm. But I take your point. But I mean, the thing when you look at it is that the regulations for the group stage are quite clear, in that they say if a game can't go ahead on the day it's scheduled for, then it is not to be postponed until the next day, it's to be cancelled. So the emphasis on that seems to be very much towards relocation rather than rescheduling. Now the point is, they're saying that all teams have to be treated the same. So effectively, you've got 3 typhoon-threatened games. So you'd have to relocate 3 games, which logistically and safety-wise, with everything that's going on, is a huge issue. So it is really difficult. I'm not saying it's easy, and clearly World Rugby didn't want to cancel these games. They don't want the kind of stick they're getting at the moment. But I mean, there's 2 ways of looking at it. Should they maybe not have had Monday as a reserve day, the possibility they think the storm would have passed through and you could play games there? Or, as Andy says, come forward to the Friday when you know is going to be a safe day. Yes, it's difficult and a lot of problems, and Scotland would play 2 games in 3 days, but they'd rather that than bowing out, wouldn't they? Yeah,
and done the tournament rules say when it comes to the knockout stage, the games could be put back 48 hours. Well, if that's the case for the knockout stage, for the final round of pool matches, why couldn't they do the same?
You would certainly think that the group deciding games were worth doing that for, wouldn't you?
That's just sheer number of games, isn't it? And venues. When you get to knockout stages, you've ultimately got what?
4 matches.
Yeah, 4 matches.
This is 3 matches.
8 matches altogether in the knockout stages, compared to 40 in the pool stages and umpteen more venues.
Yeah, but we're just saying the final round of pool matches. No, couldn't they just be more flexible at this stage of the tournament?
The problem we've got, really, I mean, we're not out there at the press conference hearing everything that's being said, but we're hearing this phrase, robust plans, contingency plans, and then you're hearing all those plans will look like, but unfortunately they couldn't happen. So we're not exactly clear what they were trying to do exactly, in terms of were they looking to play at a different venue on a different day. We don't know. Whatever plans they've had in place, they've been scuppered by the weather. weather.
Yeah, I just hope that the Japan-Scotland match goes ahead. Otherwise, I think the credibility of the tournament will be damaged.
It's funny you say that. I was literally just about to ask a question from one of our Facebook watchers. Phil says, will the integrity of the tournament be compromised should that game not go ahead?
Well, it's not ideal, is it? I mean, for who goes through to the quarterfinals to be decided, and for Scotland not to put a foot on the turf this weekend and go out, nobody wants that to happen. I mean, I do go back to the thing that clearly, safety has to be the number one priority. But I suppose what we're saying is, was there any means whatsoever they could have got round all the safety issues and all the sort of logistic issues by moving it maybe to the Friday or moving to the Monday? It'd be interesting to hear the response from World Rugby if you put that to them.
Absolutely, yeah. Peter Ellison wants to know why they didn't have a contingency plan. I guess that's something you just have to wait to find out. Chris asks on Facebook, what do you think about Eddie Jones's comments about Scotland only have themselves to blame? It's typical Eddie Jones, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm really disappointed with those comments, but it's what I would expect from Smug Eddie. Smug Eddie, as he's known. Because why does he need to inflame the situation? He's saying, it's only Scotland who got themselves to blame. Let's remember that Scotland were playing Ireland in their first match. If England had played France in their first match, you don't know the outcome of that game, so the boot might be on the other foot, so to speak. So I think this is totally unnecessary from Eddie Jones. But it could be he's caught in media attention to deflect from the fact that England may be undercooked for the knockout stage, and will have a long time before their quarter-final kick in their heels.
There we go. We'll touch quickly back upon rugby because this is a rugby show. It's nice to finish with rugby. Mark Watkins asks, should Gatland consider dropping George North, saying he's contributed next to nothing in this World Cup, or is he playing to strict orders to stay where he is?
Well, it's interesting. We talked earlier in the week and we said this would be a good game, Uruguay, for him to get some ball in hands and get some confidence either in the centre or on the wing. Unfortunately, because of the ankle, he's not having a go now. I mean, I'd still expect North to play against France in the quarterfinals, and we come back to the habitual thing of trying to get him on the ball more. It was one of those games where a lot of the action tended to go the other wing towards Josh Adams of the weekend, in midweek rather. So I think North will play, and you just hope that he can be brought into use because he is a weapon. Big weapon.
Yeah, North has always had a licence to roam. You can go anywhere on the pitch, and Gatland keeps saying, he said it repeatedly, that George, we want him to get as many touches as possible, and that's when you get the best out of him. But I think it's reached a stage now where the Welsh public are becoming dissatisfied with his performances. If Alan Amos has a big game against Uruguay, could he put himself in the equation?
Or Halfpenny might come into the equation.
So why isn't George North, if he has the licence to run, why isn't he getting these touches on the ball?
Well, Simon said in that game the other day, the ball didn't really go his way. But maybe he's just a different type of rugby player to someone like Shane Williams, who was a natural rugby player who went looking for the ball and turned up anywhere and everywhere. Perhaps at the moment George hasn't quite got that confidence. Let's don't forget that he's had a lot of serious bumps in the last few years, and maybe it has damaged his confidence. Maybe he's still playing on his mind.
Okay, we'll finish with a question on the regions, which is always nice. All this morning rugby is getting a bit tiring. Let's get a bit of normal UK time. So Matt Jet asks on Twitter, it's a three-parter. Will the Cardiff Blues bounce back? Will Dragons and the Scarlets win this weekend? And when will the Ospreys win next? Yeah,
I was at the Arms Park when the Blues lost last weekend to Edinburgh. Very lacklustre, disappointing display, to be honest. And they're away at Glasgow. Glasgow have lost their first two games. They'll be desperate to get a win. I think that's a tough one for the Blues. What do you think of the other ones, Anne?
Yeah, I think the Dragons. I think they will get a lot of confidence from last weekend, and they could back it up against Connacht. Really interesting game because, of course, Connacht haven't lost many players to the World Cup. Scarlets will definitely win this weekend with a bonus point. They haven't beaten so far, playing Zebra.
Ospreys.
Ospreys,
your boys.
They're my boys. They are. Yeah, no, they're not. Yeah, they're fortunate because they play in Benetton. Great team last season, but of course got loads of players away with Italy. However, the Ospreys have got loads of injuries, and this could be a tough game for them. They've had an awful start to the season, suffered some more injury problems as well. So the team they put out on that pitch doesn't look that good, and it lacks experience, and they could come unstuck. And what will also be interesting is how many people will actually be at the Liberty Stadium watching the match.
There we go, a nice positive note to end on. That's it for today's. That's it for today's Gain Line. We'll be back on the weekend for all the action from Wales against Uruguay. But until then, you can catch everything on Wales Online.